Throughout time, people across the world told each other tales of how they came to be, of heroes and monsters, romance and tragedy, death and rebirth. Mythology helped shape the ancient world, explaining the unexplainable. This is Mythology Unleashed. In nearly every culture, the coming of death is said to be heralded by a warning of some sort. It may be something small, such as a change in temperature, a dog howling, a raven flying overhead, or something so minute that only the most sensitive could perceive it. But there have been a number of instances in mythology of a death omen being sudden, haunting, and even outright terrifying. The Harbinger taking a shape that chills one to the bone. Such is the case for the Banshee. A Banshee is a female omen of death in folklore from Ireland and Scotland, one of the Fae folk from the otherworld of Celtic legend. More often heard than seen, the Banshee was described as a non-corporeal being resembling a human woman adorned in a flowing grey gown. She may appear as a beautiful young woman, as a middle-aged matron, or at times as a fragile old crone with flowing white hair, weeping passionately, lamenting, sometimes wandering the grounds of an estate, or even washing bloodied clothes in streams. Banshees were said to be firmly tied to a specific family at a time, namely one of ancient or noble Celtic descent, particularly families whose surnames had a prefix of O, Mick, or Mock, and they would manifest in order to herald an approaching death in the family. The Banshee's warning came in the form of a haunting cry in the dead of night, whether it be a low, almost melodic wailing to signify a peaceful passing, or an ear-splitting scream to signal a painful death. Whether the sound was soft and cooing or loud and shrill, it was said to always be recognized as something truly otherworldly, like the blend of a woman's scream and the cry of a barn owl. Should a person happen to hear the wail of a banshee, someone close to them, or perhaps they themselves, would soon meet their end. Though ominous, and in some ways frightening, banshees were not said to be evil beings by any means. Recent fiction in the horror and fantasy genres often portrays the banshee as a malevolent spirit that attacks those she encounters, and her scream is often seen as a weapon with devastating effects on both body and mind. Yet it cannot be overstated that in the original Gaelic legends, the banshee does not attack, harm, or kill mortals. They merely act as a signal for oncoming death, rather than being the cause of it. Many theorize that this stark contrast between the ancient and modern interpretations of the banshee are due to a lack of understanding of Celtic culture. In fact, banshees are likely to have been inspired by a positive, though somber, Celtic tradition called the keening woman. In many parts of Ireland and Scotland, funerary practices included a woman who would loudly cry and lament, or keen, over the deceased. The keening woman may be a family member or a close associate, but many times they were a paid professional, often hired by the nobility. This mirrors the concept of a banshee wailing and lamenting for the oldest and noblest of families in Ireland and Scotland, though given an otherworldly twist, lamenting even before the person has passed on. Being an important aspect of Celtic tradition, banshees and other similar figures appear in a number of myths and folktales from Ireland and Scotland. One notable example was in the Ulster cycle, towards the end of the tale of Cuchulainn. Cuchulainn was a powerful warrior, nigh unstoppable on the battlefield. But like all warriors, no matter their might, he would eventually meet his end. he knew of his impending doom when one evening he had heard a low wailing sound and soon found an old woman washing blood-stained armor in the river. Armor that belonged to him. And he knew full well this was a banshee, and that his death would meet him soon. A short while later, Cuchulainn fought his final battle, being mortally wounded and tethering himself to a standing stone so that he may die on his feet. The banshee's warning had rang true for the Hound of Ulster. Belief in banshees has extended beyond myth and fable, however, with some attestations claiming the Fae to truly exist. There are many old tales of soldiers abandoning their posts after hearing wailing in the woods prior to engaging their enemies in combat. Terrified by the thought of their impending death, they would flee, and oftentimes be killed by enemy personnel, their own superiors for desertion, or simply by the elements if they had stayed in hiding. And with every death, the legend of the Banshee would grow and grow. Among the most iconic accounts to come from Ireland is the Bunworth Banshee. Charles Bunworth was an Irish harpist and rector for the Church of Ireland in the 1700s. And according to Thomas Crofton Croker's Fairy Legends and Traditions of the South of Ireland, a banshee was seen and heard weeping and wailing on the Bunworth estate during the week before Bunworth's death. Word of eerie moaning and cries in the night from herdsmen, groundskeepers, and other servants were at first dismissed by Bunworth's immediate family. But over the following few days, Bunworth's health unexpectedly began to decline at an alarming rate, and he soon became bedridden. On the night that Bunworth passed away, the stillness and quiet of the night was broken by a loud noise, one that sounded eerily similar to a woman moaning, as if someone was standing right outside the bedroom window. Thinking it was someone playing a prank, 2 men went out to investigate, finding no evidence of anyone outside, even with the clear full moon to light the night. When they had returned, those who had remained behind claimed that the wailing had only intensified as the search went on. The wailing had only ceased just before dawn, and Charles Bunworth had died. Though Coker's account has been hotly debated for its authenticity, the legend of the Bunworth Banshee has enchanted and terrified many who have heard the tale. But legends of the Banshee have also spread outside of Ireland and Scotland, across the Atlantic into America. Badlands National Park in South Dakota is said to be the home to a banshee, or a banshee-like creature, whose cries echo endlessly through the labyrinth-like rocks. Unlike classic banshees from Celtic mythology, whose presence and mournful wails are said to herald the death of someone, the Banshee of the Badlands is said to be a foreboding spirit, whose purpose seems to be more mysterious, cryptic, and ambiguous. Those who travel through the area and pass Watchdog Butte at night are said to encounter the Banshee. As if wishing to speak, or as if waiting for a question to be asked, she would stand beside them in an attitude of appeal. But if asked what she wants, she would then flail her arms aloft and emit a shriek that deafens all within a mile before vanishing into the night. Cattle will not graze near the haunted butte, and the locals know to stay clear, for the word has never been spoken that will quell the Banshee of the Badlands. The Banshee has long been a chilling yet fascinating aspect of mythology. A ghostly woman, hailing from the other world, who emits a heart-stopping cry that sounds like a mournful lament or an ear-splitting scream, and signals an oncoming death, sounds like something straight out of a horror story. And yet, Banshees have long been honored as an integral part of how the peoples of Ireland and Scotland viewed death, offering a unique insight to the complexity of Celtic folklore and belief. Though she is as ominous and foreboding as any harbinger of death, and has been demonized in storytelling of the modern age, the Banshees are one of, if not most famous creatures, of Celtic legend.